Well, good morning, my friends. Welcome to another segment of Last Days Live. Got a lot to talk about today. I had several things in the news that I thought were remarkable that we need to go over, but for just a moment, I'd like you to stop and think and consider what's going on in our world. I was just walking through my office, and I picked up an old copy of Newsweek, and I noticed this on the cover. Where were you when the trade towers fell out of the sky? Pushed out of the sky. Exploded out of the sky by violence. Where were you? You know, for some of our people, including my son, my youngest son, he wasn't even born then. And so it's kind of like ancient history to them. It's kind of like reading about the Civil War or something like that. For many of us watching this, that was like yesterday. You remember it, vividly remember it. I remember where we were, and we were on the West Coast, and I remember feeling so isolated from my security realm, those kind of things. We were doing meetings out in California, and all the airports were closed, all the major bridges were closed, and thankfully we had a motel room, Motel 6, and we reserved it for several more nights because we didn't know how long it was going to take us to get out of there. I vividly remember. We are living in the last days, and we need to be very serious about what's going on around about us. In the interim, since that time, we have not only introduced many Muslims into our context. I bet many of you, when you go to Walmart, whatever, you're finding more and more individuals who have the Muslim apparel and those kind of things going on, and you're concerned about those kind of things. How did that happen? We're electing Muslims to rule over us now. We are living in the last days, and it's very important that we rise to the occasion, prepare ourselves, prepare our families for whatever may be on the horizon for us. Here's our passage, but mark this. Paul tells the young man Timothy, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit by way of prophecy, there's going to be terrible times in the last days. I think we're just beginning to see some of the stuff that's going to play out in front of us. And it's going to be live, just like this broad, live last days. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to keep our kids close. We need to make sure that they are prepared for eternity, recognizing that this world is not what it's about, that there could be great suffering between now and the time that they are called home. Are we preparing them for all of those kind of things? All right, well, let's get after this. This morning, here's my first current event that I wanted to talk about. Just a little while ago this morning, I'm told that the president has said that he is going to declare a state of emergency on our southern border. And I'm told he's also going to sign this little budget thing that keeps the government, part of the government, from being shut down, etc. Democrats promised that if he just reopened the government, they would negotiate. Well, this is what he got. And it was just a fraction of what he needs to build the wall. In fact, I read this morning that what he got from this little proposal or this little thing that he's going to sign, but what he got was enough money to build about 55 miles. The Democrats really bugged me. But anyhow, he's going to have to declare a state of emergency in order to really free up some funds, but he already declared that once he declares the state of emergency, the Democrats, who care more about illegal aliens than they do their own people, they're going to, of course, fight this in the court of law, and that's going to, prolong the process, and we're going to have more human trafficking, more drug busts, we're going to have more things, violence is going to happen on the southern border while the Democrats play out their cards so that they can do anything possible to embarrass our president. And it really concerns me, because as these pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together with regards to the last days, we begin to see how it's all starting to take shape with regards to persecution on the church and Christians. I will say this, however, about the state of emergency. I'm really concerned about that because of a kind of a threat, if you will, that Pelosi and what's that other guy's name? I can't even call it now. Anyhow, but I'm told that they made this kind of an offhanded threat that, scenario, what happens if we get us in the future a Democratic president and there's a shooting and he decides that he's going to declare a state of emergency and he's going to take away all of our guns, Well, first of all, that's what the Democrats would do because of their insanity with regards to leaving us, big government is great government as far as Democrats are concerned. As long as I'm getting handouts, great. And Yet they don't seem to process that some of us on the lower side of things, we're the ones that are taking, I'll give you an example. If big government's such a great idea, then why is it that we don't insist that all of our elected officials live under the same healthcare system that they pushed through with Obama? And by the way, ought to be fined for not living under that healthcare system. See, the problem is you've got many folks in big government who want big government because they're in big government. They're secure. They're fine because they've got the power. But that's not the way our nation was founded. Our nation was founded on the little guy. It's founded on the people like me and people like you who are watching this. And we've got to empower them. And so big government's bad government. And we need to return as much power as possible to the state. Because when the federal government sends in the federal troops, they don't understand us. They're not local. They don't appreciate us. But I guarantee you, if there's a law passed that here in Greene County, the local folks are supposed to start collecting weapons, there are going to be a lot of local officials who are going to balk against that because they know the local people. But you send in the feds, they don't know us, they don't appreciate us, and they have no sympathy for us. You see why state government, having the central power in the state, is so very important. Well, you're getting me way off. But anyhow, state of emergency is going to be declared. If not already, I guess he's verbalized it. I don't know what has to happen with regard to signing documents, etc., on our southern border, and I applaud him. By the way, I read this morning that there are like 30, present tense, 30 state of emergencies that are active right now. And so this idea of the government the president declaring a state of emergency is not uncommon. And I think that this one probably is more worthy than some of those other things that are going on right now. We've got to secure our southern border. We've got to prepare ourselves for whatever is coming. And so, kind of back to my magazine, this kind of stuff, we've got to secure ourselves. I recognize that not all of the terrorists are coming through on the southern border. I get that. But I also recognize that you're an idiot if you don't see that there are that we have to look at this in segments. And we've got to take the whole picture. Yes, our president wants to secure the airlines, and he wants to secure even the northern border, for that matter. All of these things are very, very important. But when you see a problem as big as the problem that we have right now with human trafficking and drugs and all those kind of things happening at our southern border, we're idiots not to go down there and do something about it. Pray for the president. Please pray for the president. Can't say it. But here's the one that I really wanted to spend some time on this morning with regards to current events. This Green New Deal. I keep calling it the New Green Deal, but it's the Green New Deal. I got to get my words straight there. But there's Alexandria Cortez. She's one of the representatives from New York, 14th Congressional District, I'm told. She's a House freshman, and boy, has she stirred the pot. And she got this thing that she has opposed. She has put forward, and so many of us, I hope, us common citizens will oppose, because when we begin to recognize some of the stuff that's happening with regards to this New Deal, there are at least three things that concern me. One is this mandate for a socialistic utopia. Let me just read an article, if you'll allow me. It's just actually part of an article. This is actually from CNN. I get a little criticism because I use Fox News so much, so let's just go to CNN, because they certainly are not a big fan of President Trump. But here we go. This is CNN. The author dude's name is Zachary B. Wolf. And this went up on yesterday, Valentine's Day. But the proposal, which is on its way to becoming a litmus test for the Democratic Party's many 2020 contenders, isn't a simple fix for what ails the U.S., this liberal says. It would equal taking American society back to the drawing board and rebuilding it from the safety net up. President Donald Trump and the Republicans like Senate Majority Mitch McConnell want to use the proposal to paint Democrats as trying to mandate a socialist utopia on the country, which is probably why House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has been so publicly skeptical of this thing, even though most Democrats running for president have signed on, at least conceptually. The Green New Deal is more a list of ideas and ideals than an actual proposal, although the new climate change regulations it suggests could run to $1 trillion. What was entered as official legislative language on Capitol Hill declares the government should take a stronger position on everything from cutting carbon emissions to giving every American a job to working with family farmers to retrofitting every building in the country. That's where you're seeing all of the memes on Facebook about cow emissions. Here's a look at some passages that struck. I'm not going to read those. There's some. You can go to that article if you want to. It was up on. I guess it was up. Yeah, it was on CNN yesterday. Zachary B. Wolf. Read it for yourself. But there were several things from that article, and again from a liberal. This was CNN saying this. But there are several concerns that even they're putting forth. Number one, this mandate of a socialist utopia. You think it's so utopian? You need to take Miss Cortez down south and let her live in Venezuela for a while and see if she appreciates. Everybody seems to come back to this idea, but we can make it work. But we can make it work. We've had history. It doesn't work. The more you empower the people, the more you give the people initiative, the better off they're going to be. That's called capitalism. And this socialist utopia that Cortez is pushing, it fits in really well with this last time persecution that's going to come down upon the church. And we need to be not only opposed to this, but praying that people such as this young lady, who I don't have a lot of respect for as far as her ideas are concerned, this young lady can be tempered at the very least, removed possibly from ruling over us. Number two, this idea of climate change regulations that are going to equal up to $1 trillion. That's a lot of money in it. They're talking about having all of us, redo our houses and the buildings and all of it. It's just nuts. One of the problems here is a worship of the planet, a worship of things, a worship of animals. I believe we ought to be good stewards of everything God gave us, but He did not make the planet for the planet. He didn't make the planet even for the animals. He made the planet for His prized creation, which is human beings. That doesn't mean that we ought to spoil the planet. But it does mean that some of this stuff that they are proposing is almost planet worship. And we need to be, again, because remember, Christians are going to be on the outside of that one, right? We're going to be the troublemakers. We're going to be the ones at fault. And so we're going to be the ones persecuted because we're the ones at fault. All right. Number three, it would equal, this is a quote, it would equal taking American society back to the drawing board and rebuilding it. Think about that. This proposal that's being made, according to this liberal from the CNN, he's saying that what's happening would equal taking the American society, it seems, back to the drawing board and rebuilding it. Are you sure you want the folks in Washington, D.C. in charge of redrawing the United States of America? I don't. I've done a lot of study. In fact, I even wrote a book about our forefathers and foremothers and the godly influence, and nothing less than inspiration, it seems to me, as far as answers to their prayers and giving them wisdom when they set up the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all those kind of things. Believe me, these were individuals that were empowered by God, I am convinced, to put together a nation that we are blessed to live in. These individuals, like Cortez, are not empowered by God, because you see so many things that they are. Take abortion, for instance, right up into the moment of birth. Clearly that's not from God. And so this idea of allowing these people to redesign our nation just gives me the all-overs. Imagine how that will play into the last days persecution that's going to come down upon the church. Are you prepared for it? Are you ready, and is your family ready to deal with all the stuff such as that? All right, let's see what we got here. I need to take off that. Oops. What did I just do? Always had trouble with this. Let's see, that one goes and that one goes. There you go. Look at me. All right, I don't know if you're going to call it a second segment of this thing, but I remind you that I think that there are two of the greatest threats to the church today and Christians are Islam from without, Calvinism from within. And we're going to deal with that. Last time I only dealt with Islam, but in the future times, I'm going to deal with both of these until I run out of the material, at least. First of all, let's deal with Islam. Last time, you might recall, we dealt with the Ishmael prophecy of Ishmael, and we talked about Ishmael, that first one, Ishmael, and Muhammad, and how Muhammad believes that he is an ancestor of Ishmael, and he I'm convinced, probably couldn't even read or write, and so he was just memorizing stories that he heard around the campfire, and he knew that if he was going to gain the trust of the Jew, gain the trust of the Christians living about him, that he needed to tie into the Bible account somehow. And so he decided all of a sudden, epiphany, I think, hey, I can claim to be the great whatever grandson of Ishmael. Can't claim Isaac because the Jews done got him, but I can claim Ishmael. And by the way, Ishmael's the firstborn of Abraham. Problem was, Muhammad clearly didn't know Scripture. If he had, he wouldn't have chosen this particular character, because you find in Scripture that the prophecy is that Ishmael would grow up to be a wild donkey of a man, and just a few chapters later, that prophecy begins to be fulfilled in his lifetime. And so, again, Muhammad just didn't know Scripture. But Muhammad decides he's going to claim credibility by saying that I am the great whatever of Ishmael, and so if he's going to claim it, I say take responsibility for it. And so if Ishmael was a wild donkey of a man, I suppose your people will become the same thing, Muhammad. And in a sense, they are. They're more violent towards themselves oftentimes than they are towards Jews or Christians. Anyhow, that was last week. Now we need to talk about Muhammad and Islam. And I'm going to throw up a map here if I can see. Where am I? Right there. Okay. We're going to go take that one off. No, I don't want to take that one off. I want to take that one off. There you go, Sonny. And we want to throw this one up. Yeah. I know, I'm not much of a weatherman kind of guy, but, just give me time. I'm getting it together. The dude in the bottom left-hand corner, obviously that's not Muhammad, but I wanted to give you kind of a visual. That's the Ayatollah Khomeini from Iran from years ago. It was a real thorn in our side. But anyhow, did you know that the ancient ruins of the city of Babylon lie about 50 miles south of modern-day Baghdad? Now, if you look about, to the top right-hand corner, you'll see that one arrow. That's Baghdad, okay? And just south of there are the ruins of the magnificent city of Babylon. Of course, Babylon was the capital that came and they conquered Judah and the southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, the southern kingdom, and they took them away into captivity. The 10 northern tribes, they went off into captivity, never to come back again. But the southern tribes, they went off into Babylonian captivity. And they went to, many of them, to this very area. Daniel and his 3 buddies, they certainly lived in this particular area. If you go about dead center in the map there, you'll see the arrow just south of Jordan or just below Jordan. That arrow is pointing approximately at Jerusalem. In between Jerusalem and the ancient ruins of Babylon, there's a lot of desert land. That's Jordan largely, and Saudi Arabia, and parts of Iraq, as you can see there. But it's approximately 600 miles, something like that, across there. And so just trying to give you a mental note. If you were to measure St. Louis south to New Orleans, that's about 600 miles. So it kind of gives you an idea of the distance between those 2 arrows. Then move south there, and you'll notice Medina and Mecca. Medina is the top arrow, and Mecca is the middle arrow, I should say, towards the bottom, and then Mecca is the bottom one. Of course, Mecca is the most holy site for the Muslims, and Mecca is where Muhammad did a lot of his growing up. He actually spent a lot of his adulthood in Medina. That's why Medina becomes a holy city. He was run out of Mecca. And then years later, after he'd built up, he married a rich woman, and he got a lot of power and all those kind of things. He formed him an army, and he went back to invade Mecca. It didn't really have much of a battle there because they recognized that they couldn't resist him. And so he takes over Mecca. And so now Mecca is the most holy city. But you've got those 3 arrows on the left there. Those are the 3 holiest cities of Islam. Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Yeah, Jerusalem is one of the holy cities. Although, interestingly enough, the word or the name Jerusalem never even appears in the Quran. But what do you do with that? Anyhow, there's some history for you as far as Islam is concerned. We'll deal more with this in future discussions on last days. All right, next, I wanted to go to Calvinism. Well, I told you that this is the second thing that I think. This is the one from within. I think that Calvinism is a cancer. I think that it is really at the root and the heart of entitlement doctrines and some of the selfishness that we see in our worship services, the lack of loyalty and commitment. I think that it really roots in Calvinism. And I've got a seminar on this one, 5-part seminar. If you're interested in having me come to your congregation, love to do that. Here's our introduction, though, to Calvinism. From without, we've got Islam. From within, we've got Calvinism. Why even study the topic of Calvinism? Well, I'll tell you why. You see those phrases there? These are all rooted in Calvinism. You ever heard the idea of original sin? Or how about this one? An outward sign of an inward grace. Once saved, always saved. Ever heard those phrases? That's Calvinism. Calvinism is, as you see in the bottom paragraph, it's one of the most alarming parts of Calvinism is there are so many unsuspecting followers, folks who haven't taken time to research the core nature of these doctrines. And let me just say this up front. There is no such thing as the Church of Calvin. And so unlike, listing off, the Pentecostals, the Baptists, the Methodists, the Church of Christ, the whatevers, you don't have the Church of Calvin. And so it's a little bit confusing because what happens is Calvinism actually is a cancer that has infected all of Christendom. Even my fellowship, the Restoration Fellowship we even got folks in our fellowship who are affected by many of these entitlement doctrines. And it's so very, very important that we identify them as false teachers and false doctrine, because if we don't, the younger generation is just going to assume that it must be. Give you one illustration. The sinner's prayer. Ever heard of it? Everybody talks about the sinner's prayer as if it is like some major biblical principle. Did you know that the concept of the sinner's prayer is not even mentioned in Scripture? That's just something some man decided he would come up with, and largely because he wanted to circumvent the essential nature of baptism. And so here's the idea. You need to just close your eyes and repeat after me, and I'll say some prayer that I've made up in my head, or maybe I've got it written down from some creed from my particular denomination. You say this prayer along with me, accept Jesus into your heart, another phrase that isn't even in the Bible, and all of a sudden, you're going to be a Christian. The problem with that is it's man's stuff. It's not God's stuff. The greatest weakness of Calvinism is their dependence upon Calvin. If they really truly wanted to go back and do what the book says, they wouldn't call themselves Calvinists or even Reformed theology. That's only a partial. They would call themselves either Restoration Christians or just Christians. Just go back to the Bible and let the Bible interpret the Bible. Here's my problem in the last days. What we're seeing is, not only from without do we have all of these pressures coming on us with regards to Islam, physical persecutions, but we have the spiritual persecutions coming upon us from within. I think Calvinism, Reformed theology is a part of that because it's just a cancer. It's eating us from the inside with regards to our resolve, with regards to our free will, with regards to the need for us to, Acts 17, 26 and 27, reach out, seek after God. It's an entitlement doctrine that undermines the whole idea that you and I have personal responsibility. And so if we can allow Calvinism to eat at us from the inside and Islam to eat at us from the outside, imagine what that's going to do to the church. That's why I believe that these two things are two of the greatest threats facing us in these last days. All right, meme of the week. I'm not big on political sarcasm, to be honest with you, because it just kind of reduces the conversation to a joke. And yet, things like this are posted, and honestly, when I read it, at first I kind of took it as being sarcasm, and then I thought, but that's truth. That's just factual. I know it's extreme, but a lot of sarcasm or a lot of facts that become sarcasm, they seem to start in this whole idea of just going to the extremes. And that's why I kind of just dismissed this as sarcasm at first, and then I got to realizing, you know what? It is the Democrats. They are the ones. Look at what's happening in Virginia. Look at what happened in New York. Amazon, by the way, pulled out of New York, and I'm glad. But anyhow, think about the stuff that's happening there. It really is the Democrats who are pushing primarily to eliminate the child in the womb, give the woman the right to kill her own child within the womb. I recognize the Republicans have a long way to go, and they need to grow a backbone and do a whole lot more, but at least they're not pressing things like the Democratic governor of Virginia saying that if the child is born and not breathing, we'll just lay it on the table until it suffocates unless the mom really cares. Think about that. So yeah, bless her heart, she didn't make it out alive. The Democrats didn't get her. God bless her. Well, I already did that one, didn't I? Commercial break, if you'll allow me. I commissioned my son to put that together. That's an illustration. He draws cartoons, and he just phenomenal about it. But I said, son, I want a realistic animation. It took him several days to actually do this. And we got it actually printed, and it's going to frame. We're going to put it on the wall, and I'm excited about it because I think he's got some really, really cool talent that's at work there. But the commercial is this. I am employing Gabriel to do a lot of stuff for me. Not the least of which is he's drawing some memes for me that I'm going to focus on in my Monday morning time when we do the silly stuff. And they're just religious funnies that he's making. Anyhow, I'm paying him to do some of this stuff for me because he's trying to earn money to go to a missions program this summer that he goes to every summer. Both my boys have. Well, Cindy and I started it, so I guess they don't have a lot of choice. But they both grew up doing it and loving it. And he's trying to raise some money in order to go to MAP, the Missionaries for America program. And I don't remember how much he has to raise, but it's like $1,200 or something like that. And so anyhow, I'm paying him to make me some memes. This was kind of a selfish one. It wasn't really for the ministry. This was just going to be hanging on my wall. But my point for this is to say this. If you would like to support Gabriel and help him go to this missions program, and you see that address there, you can send him a contribution. Please make sure you write on it what it's for so he doesn't just think that he's getting a birthday present late or something like that. But write on it that so that he can go to the Missionaries for America program. Or just put MAP in the memo. He'll get it. He understands what that is. And we lay those checks aside, and then he'll have that opportunity. But I'm really proud of my son. He's got some real talent there, and I'm hoping that he'll be able to use that in a ministerial way in the future. So would you pray for Gabriel that he'll be able to use his art ability in a big way like that? All right, the bug out bag. We're almost done. Where's my bug out bag? Cindy's gone to her mom's again, but before she left, I grabbed it out of the trunk. So I hope she doesn't get stranded between here and there. Survival till arrival. Yeah. And had my good friend Marcia from Kentucky send me some information just, I think it was either early this morning or late last night. And she's definitely in the running and getting my bug out bag, because I appreciate those who give me information to help me not only know the facts better, but to be inspirational with our time together on last day's live. So, Marcia, you're in the running. You folks keep helping me with information, and maybe you can get you a bug out bag. I've been showing you what I put in my bug out bag. One of the things, I just keep a simple napkin. It got stained right there. But I just keep you never know when you're going to need cloth. You never know when, if somebody could be injured. You need to, press the wound or, whatever it may be. So I keep this in my bug out bag because I think that it's important. So that's something you could do. Bug out bag. You need to get me one. Oh, yeah. And here's our last thing. Chin up. Keep your kids close. Your whole family. Keep them close. You need to establish a full-time homemaker, a full-time home protector. If ever there was a time, it is now. We need those individuals. You need to invest in heaven, and you need to make sure that your family's investing in heaven. And you need to notice the context around about you, because a lot of things are happening in our world that are pointing to the last days. Keep your eyes on the skies. He's coming. But we've got to survive until he arrives. Survival till arrival. Well, there you go, my friends. Send me your material. Send me some information that I can use on last day's live, and I'll put you in a run for my bug out bag. We'll give out another one at the first of the month. What would that be? March? I guess so. All right. Sonny Childs, hope this was worthwhile. Be there. Matthew 16:26.